Hey everyone, and welcome to And Action episode 30. It's a new year. We're talking all new movies today. So great to have you with us. Happy New Year. And Happy New Year to my co-host, as always, here with Mikey Messier. He's showered, fresh, and ready for the new year. What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm good, Tommy. I've had a few technical difficulties the last few weeks, so thanks to you and the audience for hanging with me. Hopefully, today will be a bit better. And looking forward to discussing this first episode of 2023. It should be exciting.
As am I, Mike. But before we get into that, what was your feedback like on last week's episode about Bill Moseley?
From the horror contingent, it was pretty strong. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that love this guy in the horror film community. And you talk about a genre of film that really has a loyal fan base. The horror film world, with the conventions, with the Facebook pages, the groups, just a lot of people love horror films, and Bill is definitely a on the kind of Mount Rushmore or the shrine of those type of individuals.
Absolutely. I got a lot of great feedback too. Like you said, such a strong fan base there in the horror community. And a lot of, like we said, we always get to take a trip down memory lane. And I had a lot of great conversations with people that have worked with Bill, that we've worked with him together. So it was fun to kind of catch up with people and talk about that. And even Bill himself shot me a message on Twitter, actually late last night, I think it was. And he just said, "Hey, Tommy, great podcast. Thank you very much." So really cool to see Bill give us the seal of approval. That made me feel really good. I mean, you feel, almost obligated. It's not like we're writing it's not like we're writing a biography about these people when we do these podcasts, and it's not that serious. An editor is not going to go over this or anything. But when we do these shows, we do try to make it as accurate and true to form as we can. So nice to see that Bill Moseley himself watched last week's episode and gave it the thumbs up. So that meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to me that he shared it out and promoted it on his social media pages. And it meant a lot to me that a lot of you listening and watching shared it out to your social media pages too. We appreciate all the help we can to get this show out there. As we're checking in here, we've got Kim Kaling says, "Happy New Year." Happy New Year, Kim.
Thank you.
As always, great to have you here. So, Mike, Happy New Year, 2023 already. We're in the roaring 20s here as we move down the road. I wanted to spend today, it's a little bit of an off the beaten path kind of a show as far as the topic goes. We're going to we got a couple of kind of pointers and things that we're going to talk about as far as like, what can you do if you're an actor or a filmmaker, a writer, director, producer? What can you do? What are some strategies to kick the year off in a positive way? I think that often when we have a new year come upon us, we feel this kind of anxiety and the need to like get off our ass and do something and make something happen. And sometimes we get nervous, and sometimes we can almost set these impossible goals that you could never ever reach. So we're going to get into a little bit about that. We're going to get into a little bit about New Year's resolutions and some do's and don'ts there. And we're just going to talk about, we're going to probably spend like the second part of the show just talking about, man, it's funny. Sometimes you're moving so fast when you're inside the race car
Sure.
that you never really get out a chance to get outside and see how quickly you've gone and how many miles you've traveled. So, you and I were kind of talking about this show, and we just got to thinking, man, I got a lot of movies coming out next year. A few movies that I directed, a couple movies that I got a chance to act in. So there's just a lot going on, and I don't think we don't really talk about the current very much on this show. And I
Right.
think today we're going to spend some time talking about what's current, what's going on now, and what's going on down the road as we check in. Chris Whitcomb, good morning, fellas. Happy New Year to you too, Chris. Chris is a
Thank
terrific
you.
actor. Gotten to work with Chris on many a movie sets, but there's one right now. It's we're kind of past the season, but Chris is terrific. And Merry Xmas, we shared that set together, and we just talked about that movie a few weeks ago. So great to have you with us this morning, Chris.
What
So
role is
Mike,
Chris in Merry Christmas?
he
What
played
what's he
the
played?
young couple, the young couple at the bar. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, he did good.
yes, Mike. Yeah. So let's talk about New Year's stuff, buddy. Um, what are your thoughts on New Year's resolutions? Because I think that sometimes people put a little too much emphasis on them. And I'm not saying it's just like another day. It's great to have goals, but I think it's important to not make goals that are going to stress you out even more than accomplishing the goal itself would.
A few years ago, Tommy, on good old Facebook, which is my mostly social media forum of choice, I posted something to the effect of that January 2nd was actually the most important day for New Year's resolutions, because everybody kind of has a January 1st resolution. But what are you going to do on January 2nd, or this year, for our case, January 3rd? Um, it's like that thing with the gyms, and as a guy that goes to the gym a lot, this, they sell so many memberships in like November, December of one year, and then by February, March of the next year, half the new customers aren't coming anymore. So to me, resolutions are great. Um, Goals are great. All of it's great. But what's even more important is the execution of those goals. If you're not going to actually put the time in, and bro, as an acting coach, I've experienced this with a lot of would-be actors, people that have the great fantasies or the great goals, dreams of being on television or in feature films, but you tell them to read an acting book and suddenly they don't know how to read. Or you tell them to memorize a monologue and suddenly they don't want to put the 3 or 4 hours in to memorize a 4 sentence or a 5 sentence monologue. So the real thing, buddy, is execution in my book.
Well said, my friend. Here are some things that I do. Again, on this show, we just like to talk about things that have been successful for us in the past. There's no right or wrong way to eat this Reese's. It's just one of those things that this has kind of worked for me. So what I like to do at the beginning of the year, and I did this, I spent a good hour or two in front of the notebook, just myself and my pen and some paper, and I took inventory of what I've got going on. So step one, take inventory. And what I mean by that is if you're a writer, if you're a director, all those ideas that you've had throughout the year, all those different projects that you wanted to get into, list them out, write them down. Try to do it like triage in terms of, I put sort of like the most realistic projects that I think that I really could kind of make something happen within the next handful of months at the top of the list. And then towards the bottom of the list, I put those kind of, down the road goals, the movies that are just kind of maybe it's just, I've got a lot of movies that are just a nugget of an idea. It's just a little crouton on the salad of storytelling. It might be just a sentence, those are the movies that'll kind of go towards the bottom of the list. But one thing that I think a lot of filmmakers don't realize is there's a little bit of like the shotgun method. When you fire a shotgun, a bunch of little pellets come out usually. You get like a spray so that chances are you're going to hit something. Your chances of hitting something become a little more increased when you're firing out all this buckshot all at once, right? Well, it's the same thing with the creative world. A lot of people get married to this one concept or this one screenplay that they have, and they can't get it out of their way. And they keep tripping over this one fucking idea that they really want to get off the ground. And while they're doing that, they're soaking up all this other potential creative freedom to work on other projects that might be just as exciting, just as sellable, just as fertile. But you get hung up on that one. So what I really tried to do, and what I'm trying to do this year, is think of myself in a way as a mini studio in a sense. And like, okay, what are 20 concepts that I could kind of work with moving into the new year? And with that, this is kind of part of one of my goals that kind of segues into one of my goals for the year. I've realized that I've got all these ideas in my head, and it's impossible for me to write them all by myself. The thought of me sitting there and doing it by myself would just be impossible. There's not enough time in the day. However, I don't want these ideas to just sit in my brain and die on the vine. And you know how it is in the creative world. If you wait too long, there's a good chance someone else might beat you to the punch.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, it happens all the time. You're flipping through the channels and you see a trailer for a movie and you're like, oh man, I had something that was like so close to that. Now it's kind of dead. So I have a lot of ideas. I want to get them out. I don't want them to just die in my brain. So, hey, And Action World, this is me talking to you. I'm looking for some writers to partner up with and, take one of these 20 projects and work with me and, help shoulder the load a little bit. So those are some of my goals, really just like branching out, realizing that I don't have to do it all by myself. There is help out there, realizing that it's great to collaborate with people, and realizing that these ideas, if they're just in my head, they're almost useless. They're not really ideas. They're nothing. So it takes a lot of work to get them on paper. Step one for everybody out there listening, if you're trying to just figure out what to do next, take an inventory, as Anna checks in. What's up, Anna? Always great to have you with us. Happy New Year.
Well, I think that's a great strategy, Tommy, and I like your inventory idea. And you're right. It's sometimes in this artistic world, or especially with film, we hear the cliche of the collaborative medium all the time, but at the same time, it's also in many ways a solitary medium, or at least it feels that way. When you're writing a script, especially, it's basically, for the most part, one person and a computer, and hopefully they have Final Draft or some type of screenwriting program. And if you're an actor, a lot of times, if you are memorizing a monologue, unless you've hired an acting coach, which is a great idea, you might be on your own to do that. Or for the audition process, a lot of auditions are handled now online through video auditions, so that can be kind of solitary. So it's almost, in a way, Tommy, we're the solitary artists or solitary individuals who are always looking for that next group to be a part of. And I read Christopher Reeve's book, I'm Still Me, several years ago. And he said that when he was on Broadway, he discovered a painful truth that being in these big Broadway shows was like being part of a family. But once that 2 or 3 week run of the play was over, that family was no more. And you might see these people in other productions or around town, but you'll never have that same tightness when you were making the production. And so it's an interesting business that we're in, an unusual one. It's non-conventional, and I think a lot of people maybe struggle with that.
Well, you just kind of brought up an interesting topic that kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about next, which is sometimes we do get so close with people on these different projects that we're working on. And then, we've talked about this before on the show, the couple months, 6 months, a year, 2 years go by, and then all of a sudden you just don't talk to that person anymore. And your relationship can kind of fade a little bit. Well, this is the perfect time of year to turn that shit around, because New Year is, the New Year era, the New Year time of year. It's the best possible time frame to reach out to anybody that you haven't talked to in a long, long time and just say, hey, Happy New Year. Just wanted to check in. Hope all's well. Would love to catch up in the new year. It's just so easy. And I know it sounds simple. It sounds like, well, no shit. But you know what? Not enough people do that. If you've got somebody in your life that you haven't talked to in a good 6 months, a year, 2 years, reach out, say Happy New Year. Here's the thing. No one is ever going to look down at their phone and be like, this motherfucker, I can't believe they wished me a Happy New Year.
Right.
Can you believe they had the audacity to wish me a Happy New Year? No one's going to be mad at you for doing that. No one's going to think it's weird. And hey, personalize it a little bit so they don't think it's and nobody, not that it's a knock, but I mean, nobody wants to think that it's just like a bulk text. You know what I mean? Maybe throw their name in it, give it a little personality. Here's the other cool thing about New Year's. And I think the older you get, the longer you can stretch this. But you can tell someone Happy New Year like 2 weeks into the year. You don't have to wait. It doesn't have to be like midnight when the ball drops. I got to
Right.
get all my Happy New Year's out or I'm fucked. It's like, no, you say Happy New Year a week or two into January. It's still covered under the statute of limitations for New Year's greetings.
You ever get one of those texts, Tommy, it's like a facade of being personal, and then it's just quickly revealed that it's like a mass text because everybody starts responding, what is this thing? Get me off of this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, text chains are one of those things that I mean, hey, look, at least people are reaching out. That's what I say. It looks like we lost Mikey temporarily. I bet you he hit the button by accident, but I'll continue on. Uh, Chris Wickham says, let's say you do have a solid idea for a or foundation for a script. Where exactly do you start when writing a screenplay? How do you get the words to start flowing if that idea is just in your head? Well, step one, Chris, would definitely be, I'm a big fan of the outline. Hold on, let me let Mikey back in. Mike,
Thanks,
come on
buddy.
in. Chris has a
Thank you.
great question here that I'm going to answer real quick. Chris basically wants to know, where do you start? You got a great idea for a screenplay. What's step one? I want to get this idea down. I don't want it to just die in my head. What do I do? And let me tell you, it's overwhelming at first because you think of all these pages and it can quickly become like you got to write some goddamn term paper. And it's like, what, 90 pages of this? But you got to, as they say, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. I don't personally eat elephants. I don't recommend eating elephants. Uh, I'm sure it's not even legal to eat an elephant. But as they say, you got to just break it down one little piece at a time. And for me, step one's always the outline. I
Right.
like to do, if you go back, Chris, you can check out, I'll get the episode number and we'll put it up there. But we did an episode on just like screenwriting and outlining. And I kind of go through my basic premise and I'll break it down for you now in a couple sentences. But whenever I'm trying to outline anything, we think of stories are told in 3 acts, usually beginning, middle, end, act one, act two, act three. You have events that happen in these movies, every 5 or 10 minutes, something is going to happen to push the story. So I like to list out about 10 events in each act, 1, 2, and 3. And I'll write about 10 events for each act. What's going to happen? What happens in the beginning? What happens in the middle? What happens in the end? And then I'll try to really just write like 3 or 4 pages for each event. So if you break it down, then it means you got like 30 events spread out throughout 3 acts. If you write about 3 or 4 pages for each event, you're going to have 90 pages. Now, obviously, I'm not a big math guy. Pretty sure the math does check out on that. But you got to have a concept. But that's the best way to take your ideas and sort of map it out. So like, all right, well, I'll write a few pages about this part of the story. When I say event, something that happens. Write a few pages about this event. Write a few pages about that event. And you kind of just, by the end, but next thing you know it, you'll be like, shit, I've got like 60 something pages here and I'm only halfway through. I'm cranking away. And my other tip to screenwriters that are just getting going, and I have to tell myself this all the time, I have to remind myself. A lot of times I'll have a concept for a movie, but I won't have the ending in mind first. Never start without the ending. In fact, the ending, the finish, should be the first thing that you come up with. Because from the finish, that's got to be the moment that leaves the audience like, oh wow, that's the mind-blowing moment usually, right? That's the big rug pull, the big reveal, or the satisfying moment. The couple gets together, the kid returns to the family, whatever it is. Start there. Start with your finish, because everything that you do in the story must be methodically laid out in order to service that finish. So it's almost like once you figure out where you're going to end, it's actually easier to kind of go backwards and figure out how you're going to start.
That makes sense to me, Tommy. For Chris and the other, people that would like to start writing screenplays, I would recommend one particular book. It's called Screenplay Writing the Picture. The authors are Russin and Downs. And I discovered this book on the campus of CDIA, which I think is the Center for Digital Imaging Arts in Boston, actually in Waltham. And of all the screenwriting books I've read, Tommy, which has been a lot, the Sid Field books, Robert McKee, all these guys. But I feel like for a beginner, especially for a really comprehensive overview on the whole process from start to even marketing and getting query letters out to agents, I would say that this Screenplay Writing the Picture by Russin and Downs, they have a second edition with the blue cover that I just got myself. I would recommend that as if you need some help in that regard.
Cool. We appreciate the shout out to literature, any kind of books. Don't be afraid to crack them open.
See if Russin and Downs will buy ad space on our show, Tommy.
Yeah, maybe they'll throw us a little something in the lower third.
Yeah.
All right, Chris has it, writing the picture. He's checking it out.
Good.
So another thing too, in the beginning, I said, "We'll take an inventory." I want to go back to that for a minute because actors that are watching the show might be saying, "Well, how am I going to take an inventory?" Like I'm not the one creating my own stuff. I'm acting in the stuff. All right. Well, you know what you can do? Actors at this time of year, this is a great time to circle back with people. Producers that you've worked with before, directors that you've worked with before. Reach out, say what's up. Don't be afraid to say, hey, what's going on in the new year? You got any projects? Would love to read for something. Would love to, to chat about anything you got cooking. The squeaky wheel does in fact get the grease often. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Directors work with a lot of actors throughout the course of their career. And again, not trying to sound like anyone's forgettable because everybody has a place in this world. But we forget sometimes. You'll be cast in a movie, you'll be reading a script, and I've done this before, man. You'll cast someone, and then like a day later, you're like, oh fuck, you know what? You know who would have been perfect for this? And you think about it after the fact. And a lot of times, because like, hey, how many people can you have in your mental database? So the actors that kind of reach out and they kind of check in. Again, I'm not saying don't be writing someone a handwritten 5-page letter every week. That's a little creepy. You don't want to look like a stan. But at the same time, if you're just checking in and you're seeing what's cooking for the year, that's one thing actors can do this time of year. Another thing, we've talked about this on past shows. Traditionally, in this time of year, the winter's pretty dead in a lot of the Northeast areas. Like I make a lot of films in Rhode Island. There's not always a lot going on in the winter. So, actors that are hitting the pavement in a lot of these colder environments might not find a whole lot going on, and that's okay. The winter's a great time for actors to kind of train, if you will. That's when it's like, spring training. Everybody kind of shakes off the cobwebs. Well, you can work out in the winter too. So, I would recommend this is a great time of year for actors to be working on their special skill sets. We've talked about that before. Take your fencing lessons, take your boxing classes, take your dance classes, learn how to play your guitar. These are things that you can do in the winter that, again, they just bring another little skill set to your game when you're going out and auditioning, when you're acting, when you're looking for different parts. Oh, I can play the guitar, or I can ride a horse, whatever. Ride a horse, by the way, I want to clarify.
Sing, uh,
I didn't say the end of that word.
Singing lessons, I'd say Big Tommy. Singing lessons, because a lot of productions now, I mean, maybe more for stage, are song oriented. Musicals are big, and even with films, I mean, we're seeing more and more musicals come out with films, and so if people have an interest in acting, you don't have to be Billy Joel or Liz Phair or someone more contemporary, but you should have a decent enough voice, right?
You don't need to have a new album coming out to take singing lessons, I think is what you're saying, Mike. Absolutely. Singing is one of those things that, believe it or not, you can get better at. I mean, there are some people that just naturally have the gift, of course, but with the right training, you can certainly learn how to find pitch and find your range and find out what exact songs you should be singing and what songs you probably shouldn't be singing. So yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mike. It's only, remember, your actors, your special skills are only going to make you more hireable, and that's the name of the game. So we talked about taking inventory. We talked about reaching out. Actors, another thing you can do, be proactive. I mean, social media is a crazy fucking thing, and it really does connect us all. Find out what productions are going on in your area. Contact your local film office. Ask them if there's anything going on. Ask them if they have, an email address to whoever's casting a project. Again, it's not being annoying. It's being proactive in trying to take all the information you can to potentially put yourself in a position to get a job. In a way, when you're an actor and you don't have a manager and you don't have an agent, you're your own manager, agent, talent rep, PR person, all rolled into one. And there is a little bit of a detective game that happens where, you got to go out and investigate and see what the hell's going on in your acting world.
Yeah, and one thing people can do on a nuts and bolts thing is if they do have something like an actors access page, I use that service both behind the camera and trying to be an actor for other people's productions, but you can always go in there and tighten up your resume, update your headshots, which is a whole other story, update your video clips, and apply for more work. And you know what the cool thing with Actors Access is they break down the country by regions. And you know, if you're willing to drive to a different region, you know, you can look for opportunities in those regions. You know, so there's always something you can do to kind of progress yourself. Last year, Tommy, I hired a business of acting coach, you know, not someone helping with my acting per se, but just everything I just discussed, you know, my headshots, my clips, resume, all that stuff was pretty antiquated. And it's been a work in progress, man, because my acting business of acting coach, Anastasia, she's pretty on me to make some improvements that I still haven't made, but some I have. But she's only thinking of the best for me and the other clients that she has, I'm sure.
Yeah, things like getting updated headshots are very important. Again, I've said this before. Don't go spending a ton of money on headshots. It's not one of these things that you got to spend, you know, a fortune on. But it is important to look like the person in the photo. And you know, I've probably fallen victim of this myself. My headshot's a little old, and I've seen it. I'm like, oh man, I don't even look like that anymore. So it's one of those things where nothing worse, and this has happened to me before. You're casting a movie, you look at someone's headshot, and then the person shows up on set and they look 15 years older.
Yeah.
And you're like, say to yourself, you're like, was this photo taken in 2001? Like, that's kind of a, you know, misrepresenting your look a little bit. There's nothing wrong with aging, guys. Remember, aging is the goal to life in a way. You know,
Sure.
you want to be aging. That's
As
a
opposed
good
to the
sign.
alternative.
Yeah, it beats the alternative, as they say. So don't be afraid to look your age on your headshot. You know, you want to Photoshop a blemish or two. I'm not going to tell anyone. It'll be our little secret. But as far as like, you know, make sure it's a picture within the last, I don't know, calendar year, maybe. As Miss Ash checks in, Happy New Year. Always great to see you on the feed there.
Tommy, I
Somebody,
have
go
a
ahead.
funny story about the headshot thing, just to correlate with your point. You know, a casting director, I took some classes with her, and she was always preaching the same thing to us: make sure your headshot looks like you on a good day, and make sure your headshot is recent and everything. And maybe a year or so into knowing this individual, I decided to write a freelance article about her and her casting, you know, department for a local newspaper. And they liked the article, and the interview was great and all that. And then they said, well, go to her and ask her if she's got a photograph we can use. So I went to her to get a photograph, and she gave me, the casting director that told me and everybody else to make sure your headshots are up to date, gave me a headshot of her probably about 15 years earlier.
Oh boy.
And I looked at it, and she said, I still look the same. Okay.
Bless her heart. Bless her heart.
Okay.
Bless her heart.
We did publish the picture, so she got what she wanted. But I think
Well,
the point is everybody knows that, but not everybody. If you know the lesson, but it's hard to live with it and execute it once again.
well, here's the thing, man. And, you know, we're kind of, this is a fun freelance kind of freestyle New Year episode. I'll be honest with you. I'm at a point in my career where, you know, I'm on that cusp of like playing dad now and, you know, grown man kind of parts. And in a way, I'm leaning into that. You know, like I don't really particularly want to look like a kid anymore because it's like now I can't play those other roles, you know, dad, detective, you know, it's one of those things where yes, as actors, we always want to look as young as we can. We want to have, we've all got that Peter Pan syndrome, but at the same time, like represent yourself the right way because that dream role that might put you on the map might be written for a person your age. You know, that
Right.
might be like the role that like, holy shit, I'm playing dad. Like, for example, take a look at, you know, Bryan Cranston, you know, he was an actor for many, many years and really had nothing going on. And then finally he gets cast as dad on Malcolm in the Middle and his career explodes. And it's one of those things where like, if he was reluctant to be dad and if he was still trying to be a young hotshot guy or, you know, position himself in a different way, maybe he doesn't get that part. Maybe he doesn't become, you know, one of the better actors in the world today or more notable actors in the world today. So don't be afraid to be who you are because guess what? The casting agents might be looking for just that. and you might be deceiving them and ultimately fucking yourself over by not just being who you are.
Good point. Truth in advertising. Of course, he went from the Malcolm show to Breaking Bad, correct? And he hasn't looked back since.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible the career that he's had in the last, 15, 20 years. Really, I think I heard a story that Bryan Cranston was like sleeping on a buddy's couch before Malcolm in the Middle, So it's like, what a difference a day makes, as they say. So let's get into it, Mike. It's 2023, the year of Michael Jordan, as I like to call it, because this is the only 23 that I'll ever see in my life as far as a year goes. So as far as I'm concerned, it's the year of Michael Jordan. We're going to play like the GOAT all year long. We're going to use him to inspire us every day, play with that tenacity. We got a lot going on this year, Mike. So I'm just going to kind of go project by project, sort of in the order of what is coming out. And we're basically going to spend the next 20, 30 minutes of the show here as we wind things down, just kind of talking about what's up for next year. So right off the bat, I'm gonna try to go in order of what's coming out in terms of release date. So the first project that I've got coming out is My Father, Muhammad Ali, which is a documentary that I co-directed with Chad Furdy. We co-wrote the script as well. And it is all about the relationship between Muhammad Ali, the famous legendary fighter, the greatest, and his son, Muhammad Ali Jr. And it's a very interesting story because what I'm so excited about, and I'm not going to get too into any of these movies. I'm just going to kind of tell you briefly about the movie and why I'm so excited about it, and a couple things about it. But we'll give each film its due and do a proper show probably on each one when the time comes. But what I'm most excited about My Father, Muhammad Ali, is just the fact that Muhammad Ali is this legend that everybody knows so much about. There have been so many books written about him. There have been so many TV shows about him and movies and countless documentaries. Yet here we are some, 40, 50 years after he won the heavyweight championship of the world. It's been so long. Yet you want to talk about still staying relevant. We hear that all the time, remaining relevant. In all those years, it's amazing that we have a story with My Father, Muhammad Ali, about Muhammad Ali, that nobody's ever heard about, that nobody knows about. It's a bit of a I don't want to say it's a secret. It's not that it's a secret. It's just something that isn't really spoken about. And I think that fans of Muhammad Ali and just people who love a good story in general are going to be amazed by all of the kind of new information about Muhammad Ali that we're able to present in this movie. Mike, I'm hearing like a crackling sound right now. It might be coming on your end. I don't know if
I'm
it's
hearing
feedback.
that too. It just popped in a few seconds ago.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I think that maybe the feed, the internet is just so excited about this film. Maybe try muting your line. Maybe that'll work. So yeah, that's My Father, Muhammad Ali. That is going to be coming out January 13th. So we're like right around the corner on that one. We're talking like a couple weeks away, less than 2 weeks. You'll be able to get that on all available streaming platforms. We're going to be doing a lot of press for that movie coming up. So I'm excited to get the word out on that. Actually, I was just on a show this morning, Bonjour Sports, which is a new sports talk network on Amazon Prime, which is really cool. It's a 24-hour kind of a platform. They have several different shows throughout the day, and I'm pretty sure for the most part they're live. And I got on there and I talked about Knockout Blonde, and I talked about a little bit about My Father, Muhammad Ali. So we're really excited about that. Really truthful kind of display by Muhammad Ali Jr. He's talking about some really emotional things, topics like generational abandonment, topics like struggling with addiction, topics like strained relationships with, his partners in the past, strained relationships with his family, his father. So we really get into it. Talk about peeling back all the layers of the onion. Well, This really does that. So that's My Father Muhammad Ali. That's coming out in January. Remember, it's a documentary. It's about 90 something odd minutes. And again, I think that a lot of people are just going to be fascinated by Muhammad Ali Jr.'s story, where he started, where he's been, and where he's headed.
Yeah, I think people that like, for instance, the shows on ESPN 30 for 30 documentaries, people like movies, they would probably really love My Father Muhammad Ali, and that discrepancy, Tommy, between being a famous person and still being a good family man in this case. Sometimes that is a huge discrepancy, and some of these sports people and entertainment people that we put on a pedestal, if you dig a little bit beneath the surface to their family life, it's not always as great as we would hope. And maybe it's expecting too much from any one individual to be the greatest boxer of all time. And father, I think your documentary of Muhammad Ali Sr.'s life to his son. Very interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed working on that movie. I also enjoyed making a movie with Chad Verdi. This is the first movie that Chad and I had a chance to co-direct. We've been working together for really, just about since the beginning of my career. So to be able to direct a movie together, that was a really cool experience. Really great working with the Verdi Productions team, as always, on this one. And just hearing so many cool stories. I mean, I'm a huge boxing fan. So to kind of know that where this, again, Muhammad Ali Jr. is probably having cereal in the morning with the legendary Muhammad Ali, right in the living room there across the hall. Pretty crazy stuff when you really think about it. So that's My Father Muhammad Ali. The next one, sort of in order of when it's going to come out, I think, and please nobody hold me to this too hard, because as we all know, dates can change. Anything can happen in the world of entertainment, but for the most part, this is roughly when this is all going down. We're going to have a movie that I made that I'm very excited about. It's kind of a long time coming. A movie called Johnny and Clyde will be coming out in March of 2023. Mike, Johnny and Clyde is a wild adventure. It's a kind of cocktail, a hybrid, if you will, between the horror genre, the crime drama genre. It's got a little bit of dark humor in there. It's got some action. It's got some suspense. It's got some supernatural qualities. Really, it's a bit of a medley of kind of all the things that I loved growing up as a kid, watching movies that would just get me and my friends to pop and get excited about. And of course, the cast is just absolutely phenomenal. We've got Megan Fox, Avon Jogia. It's just really great to be working with all these kind of people. And it's been a long time coming. We should have a trailer for that one really soon. But yeah, working with Megan Fox was really something else. And I'd say that, for me, that was kind of like the highlight for this film. She's obviously such a star, but also her willingness to kind of, again, like I said, play this kind of play in this world that we created. She was so willing to dive into it and added so much to the part. I think that people are going to see a part of Megan Fox in this movie that they really have never seen, because again, it deals with that level of, it's dark, but there's some humor there too, and a lot of likable qualities. I've always loved characters that are like clearly doing something wrong, but for some reason we find them very likable. There's a lot of that in this movie. Johnny and Clyde also has some really great both special effects, practical special effects, visual effects. Got a chance to work with Glenn Ciano on that movie, longtime collaborator. Glenn was the DP on that one. So he shot the film. So we collaborated together really for just weeks and weeks, if not months prior, literally sitting in my dining room with little action figures, storyboarding every single shot with Megan Fox. And one of my favorite parts of that whole process was, I had my storyboard book, which I have a unique way of doing it with action figures, and I got a chance to once I built a little rapport with Megan, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th day, it might have been, a little bit into it. I sat down with her and I was like, "Hey, can I show you my storyboards?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was like, "Take a look at this." I was like, "That's you right there." And she's like, "Oh my god." And it was a little action figure version of her, um, playing out the scene basically that we just did. And it was
Right.
cool because, she noted that it's quite accurate to like what we actually shot, and she just thought that was a really cool way to be storyboarding and thought it was really fun. So fun to get a chance to kind of also show like, hey, this is the level of dedication we put to every single shot, just making sure that, you will never find me walking onto a movie set saying like in the morning, like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna shoot this? Like, no, it's like it's methodically planned out way in advance. If you're wondering about what to shoot, you're in a lot of trouble. And I'm happy to say that on this movie, Glenn and I spent a lot of time like figuring out what we're gonna shoot way in advance and just how to do it. And we had to because the schedule was crazy on this one in terms of just like cramming a lot of action into not so many days. So I'm really excited about this one. This word gets thrown around way too much in the movie world, but I think it's actually quite appropriate. This movie's just fun. It's fun,
Yeah.
man. Like it's not homework. It's lighthearted despite all the crazy, darkness on the screen. And it's aware of itself overall. I think Johnny and Clyde's very aware of itself. So we're excited to be entertaining y'all with that one in March.
Hey, Tommy, the $1 million question from me would be, which action figure did you use to represent Megan Fox in this storyboarding?
That's interesting that you asked that, Mike. It was actually an X-Men figure, and I think I'm saying this right. Svilaki. She
Okay.
was like a supernatural kind of. She had like the ability to, not supernatural. I'm using the wrong word. She had the ability to fire like energy out of her hands.
Sure.
Maybe on the next episode, maybe we'll have her come on the show and do a bow, take a bow. Um, so that was Johnny and Clyde. Can't wait for that one. I really hope that we get an artwork and some trailer to come out soon. I'm sure we will. As soon as we do, I will. I'll get that one out there. And actually, Chris Whitcomb, who's watching along with us, was in Johnny and Clyde. So you're gonna see a little more Chris in that movie when it comes out a little bit later in the year. Well, actually, that's not that far away, man. It's so funny. I was
March
talking.
is not that far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I co-wrote Johnny and Clyde with Nick Principe, longtime collaborator of mine. We've been working together since my very first movie. Nick's a really great friend, and I was talking to him last night about just bullshitting, and we were talking about March and this is coming out, and I was like, God damn, that's gonna be here like before you know it. It's like a
Yeah.
couple of months, and boom, here it is. So, long time coming. We actually shot that movie in uh, in 2020, believe it or not. Yeah, that was shot at the tail end of 2020. Um, oh no, I'm sorry, 2021. Getting my years jammed up. We shot that at the tail end of 2021, September, October of 2021. So here we are, almost a couple years later. Well, a little less than a couple years, but my point is, I'm friggin' excited for that movie because it's been a while. So the next one to chat about is a movie called The Collective, which I just did. This movie had an amazing cast and was just all action straight through, and it was so great to get a chance to kind of flex the action movie muscles. And remember, it's a whole different skill set. There's a whole different group of people that are going to be watching a movie like that, and they want to see really hard hitting fights. They want to see, for lack of a better word, all the flash and dash that you can bring them visually. So it was really fun to make a movie in that world. Got a chance to work with Richard Switzer, producer on that one. Got a chance to work with just a lot of great artists on both sides. Actors, writers, that came on and helped me out. Of course, Tyrese Gibson was just terrific to work with. Ruby Rose, Don Johnson, and Lucas Till, who plays the lead in the film, who I can't say enough great things about in terms of his just toughness, durability, aside from just being a great actor. I mean, like we said, it's an action movie, so you got lots of fights and you're getting put through the ringer. And, he really worked hard to not disappoint, as they say, and give this movie all of it. It checks all of the boxes that fans would want in that action genre. And it was my first chance to work with Yale Productions, which I'm really excited about. Just a great team, great group of people that I get to work with, and we shot that one in Massachusetts. I don't have a release date for that one, of course. We'll be hitting the editing room really soon. I'm going to be going out to LA in January, sometime later this month, and I'm going to start chopping that thing up. Got a chance to see a rough cut, and I'm loving the action that we have so far. So that one's going to be cool. More on that one down the road. That one's kind of in the earliest stages of the game for all these movies that we talked about.
Hey Tommy, are you allowed, or do you want to mention the female that a lot of fans out there have been wondering about?
No.
Can't mention that? Okay.
Nice try, buddy.
No, I'm just asking.
No, there's still some secrets on that movie that will be revealed as we move further down further down Highway 2023.
Sure.
We're riding on Highway 23 right now for the rest of the year. So yeah, those are the 3 movies that I directed. Now we're gonna just kind of briefly talk about some of the movies that I acted in that'll be coming out. Got a chance to act in a movie called Junction, which is Brian Greenberg, and it's his first movie, and Brian is just super talented, an amazing actor, and thrilled to be working with him on what is his first movie as a director, and a wonderful story he told. Really, really amazing kind of stuff that he was able to. Again, we make these movies in a really short period of time. Talking a few weeks to shoot a whole feature. That's an accomplishment. So, really, just a great first film, and just a great film period by Brian. And I got a chance to play a very brief role, but it was fun to get in there and mix it up, and like I said, work with a director that spent so much time on the other side of the camera that he just knows what to do and how to translate it. Really great. Brian was really great at speaking with actors. He, for lack of a better phrasing, he talks actor. He knows how to speak that language. He's been in the business, for many years, and it shows with his ability to kind of, communicate and get his ideas out to the other actors in the movie. And he had a lot of actors that were his buddies come out and be a part of this film. And you could see that kind of unit on set. You could see that there was a closeness and everybody wanted to do a great job for Brian in his first film.
What type of genre would you say this movie is, Tommy?
I'd say it's a drama. It's a story about the opioid crisis and kind of how that, opioid addiction is such an issue in our country right now. And this is kind of a window into a few different stories that kind of intertwine that all deal with this real serious issue that, touches a lot of families these days. So after Preacher's Wife, I worked on a movie called Long Night, which was, again, I'm an actor in this one. And this is a movie that is kind of funny. It's Chris Wickham's in that movie too. There he is. I'm going to give him a little click his little dancing Chris's. We have 3 dancing Chris's right here. Chris is in that film. Does a great job in that movie. And it's basically like a home invasion movie. It's kind of a thriller. I believe that one's going to be on Tubi. I think that's a Tubi original. And my character is basically, I'm on a date, and my girlfriend in the movie stops to check in on somebody who is actually Chris Wickham's character. They stop to check in because the kid's home alone, kind of a thing. And he's not a child, but he's got a little bit of a checkered past, so they don't really trust him. He's might have done some bad things. You know, uh, sometimes kids get into trouble. So he got
It's
into a
true.
little trouble. So we're checking in on him, and in the process of checking in on him, we end up walking into this home invasion that's happening, and it becomes this kind of, wild, literally long night, like the title of the movie. And that one was produced by David Gear and Chelsea Vale and Chad Verde Jr. and Paul Luba were involved in that one as well. So, and that one was shot in Connecticut last summer. So that'll be coming out sometime soon, I'm sure. And then finally, The Preacher's Wife was a movie that I acted in, and I'm a little bit of a psycho in this movie. I'll be honest with you. I kind of scare myself a little bit. And this is a movie that Glenn Ciano directed. And it's got this kind of dark vibe to it. It's a little bit about baby stealing.
Oh boy.
People that actually will kind of stalk a couple and take their baby and try to assimilate them into their own family, which it's a
Oh,
really
wow.
awful, it's an awful topic and an awful thing that in fact really does happen, as fucked up as that is. Um, so that's what this movie's kind of all about. And I can't really get too deep into what goes on in that movie because I don't want to give anything away. But what I loved about being in that movie was obviously working with Glenn Ciano because it's been a while since we worked together, and if you've listened to some of our last shows, Glenn directed me in really my first role where I had a line in the movie, which was in Incubus. So it was fun to work with Glenn again at that capacity, and I got to really carve out a character. I knew about this part a little bit in advance, so I did a few things on a physical level to kind of get myself ready to play this part and get into a certain look. And I really worked hard on this movie, so I'm excited about it. I got a chance to see an earlier cut of it, and I was really happy with everything. So I'm excited for Preacher's Wife. And I can't believe I forgot to mention this. As I scrolled down, I scrolled by one of my favorite movies that's coming out this year, and I co-directed this movie with Rick Lazis, produced by Chad Verde Productions, and that is Knockout Blonde, which we've talked about a little bit on the show in previous episodes. I feel like we've kind of skimmed by it here and there, but that's the story about Kelly Maloney, the transgender boxing promoter, the former promoter of heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis, who was once representing as Frank Maloney, but then got out of the business of boxing and spent many years away from boxing. And now Kelly is back in the game. So the movie basically follows Kelly's whole career path, her personal life, her trajectory into the world of boxing, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. It's a real inspiring story about being true to yourself and holding that above everything else. If you're not truthful to yourself, you can't really, represent yourself in the best way and be the best you for everybody else. And not that we're living for everybody else, but we only get one chance to live. And Kelly's story is so inspiring because it's like you have to just live on your terms, and that's what Kelly does. And it's just an amazing, inspiring story that I can't wait to share. Also, awesome music in that movie. We were able to get Elton John. We've got a Sade track in there. The list goes on and on. Definitely the strongest soundtrack I've ever had on any movie that I've ever gotten a chance to work on, period. So I'm really excited for people to not only watch that movie, but check out the music in that movie. I think people are gonna, you know, really see that, like anything else, we've said this before, but music's so important in terms of
Sure.
like a story and getting you in a mindset and creating a vibe. And the music on this one really does that.
When you say, was it Sade, Smooth Operator Sade?
The very Sade. Yep,
That's
that's right.
great. Hey, Tommy, you and I both did some acting work, not big roles, but last summer, once again, our buddy David Gear helped us. I believe it was Blunt, directed by Anna Elizabeth James. We both kind of worked on that for a little bit and had some fun. So that
Yeah,
was
let's talk a little bit about Blunt. I had a blast on Blunt. Blunt was directed by Anna Elizabeth James. Shout out to Anna, who's an awesome woman, really talented director, and we had a lot of fun on set. Um, I was there for 2 days. This was a kind of a funny thing. I played just like one of the guys in the movie that, again, I don't want to tell too much about the story, but I'm in a very compromising position in that film. I'm not going to say what it is, but when the movie comes out, people will see that I'm taking part in a very interesting activity, we'll say. But Anna was terrific and great to work with, and in a scene that could have been a little like, this is a little awkward. She made it really easy to deal with all the potential hurdles that one might encounter when filming said scene. So Anna was terrific to work with. And then I left, I only worked the one night. And then a couple weeks later, I get a call um, that they wanted me to double somebody. So I did a little doubling in that movie, a little body doubling. I happened to look a lot like one of the actors from a certain angle. And they just needed me to kind of like get in a car and drive off. Um, so without telling too much about the story, it was a really cool moment because here we are shooting on a runway at an airport, and my character, the character that I'm doubling, basically gets behind the wheel of a Supra. Which, if
right.
you don't know what a Supra is, you kind of almost have to be a car person. Like a Supra is like the sort of like one of the top of the line Toyota vehicles, and they're like mega machines. They're incredibly fast. They are wild beasts on the road. So I got a chance to drive a brand new one. And it's funny, I get in the car and I've never driven one of these things before. Thankfully, it's an automatic. So I get in, I become familiar with it. And you know how cars are today. It's like buttons everywhere. There's not even buttons, it's touchscreen everything. So finally get it working. I pull out, I shoot the scene, and then Anna's like, "Hey, Tommy, do you think you could go a little bit faster?" And I looked at her and I go, "Oh, yeah, I can definitely go a little bit faster." And then I remember being like, "Wow, when do you ever get this chance to like be driving this like race car, get in the fucking car and just hit it?" And I just got in that car and I just remember like not flooring it because that, then the tires would kind of spin. I remember just kind of like gradually just getting on it and then hitting it hard. And that Supra just took off, man. And then I remember coming around and I'm on a runway now. And that's when, they call it cut. And then I remember being in the car on the runway and just looking forward and being like, man, I would definitely get arrested. But I'm so tempted right now to just drive this car as fast as it fucking goes straight ahead down that runway. And in my mind, I think I'm gonna like hit 88 miles an hour and go back to like 1985 or something. But yeah, that was Blunt. A lot of fun on that one. Again, that was producer Richard Switzer, um, and Paul Luba and Chad Verdi worked on that. But yeah, Anna was terrific and a lot of fun. And when she ever said, "Can you go any faster? You think you go faster?" I was like, "Hallelujah!" It's like
Right.
yes, I get to haul ass in this thing.
The film gods have smiled. Yeah, I remember going up to New England, and once again, thanks to David for kind of getting me on the radar of that project. And it was actually in the middle of a heat wave when I was working on the set, and I think people blame me for bringing the heat from Florida up there, but it was a pretty hot week. I think in the hundreds, like several days were in the three digits up there last summer for that one.
Well, Mike, I think it's fair to say that you're always bringing the heat when you're on
Yeah,
set.
right.
So, regardless, it could be in the middle of January.
Yeah,
So really like the last thing that I'm kind of like hoping for is potentially I'd like to maybe do a web series in 2023. I've been really thinking about that. No frills, down and fucking dirty. Like
all
maybe
right.
even just shooting it on my phone. Like just rounding up a couple actors that I really like, rounding up a couple writers that I really like, shooting it in my freaking house if I have to, and just shooting an episodic web series. Mike, you're cracking again, brother.
Yeah, I don't think it's on my end because I've muted myself a few times. It still comes in.
Oh, okay. We're dealing with some crack issues, and everybody knows that crack is very dangerous. So we apologize in advance for all the audio cracking that's happening. But yeah, I want to just round up the right team to make a web series and really just like will it into existence, down and dirty, make it happen. I've got a couple concepts that I've been you know, throwing around. Glenn Ciano and I have a concept that we've been talking about, and it's all about just finding the right fit, finding the right people, and finding the time. Right? Isn't that everything in life? Isn't it? Doesn't every project kind of come down to finding the right people, finding the means to do it, and finding the time? I mean, those are the three big things. People,
Yeah,
means, and by means, I mean obviously if we're producing a show, this isn't going to be a big budget. I'm going to finance it myself. Be one of those things where, you know, who knows? Maybe I could get some sponsorship. Maybe we find some sponsors that want to get behind this web series. So that's how my brain works, man. I've got a very active brain. Unfortunately, I have a really difficult time not thinking about something in the world of entertainment, whether it's movies, whether it's a web series, whether it's writing a new script. Um, so I figure, hey man, you only go around once. Let's get it all out there. And getting a web series out there is one of those things that I'd really love to do. I think that it's a sort of a I don't want to say it's an unexplored revenue stream because obviously many people have been doing it for many years, but for me, it's unexplored. For me, it's some new territory that I'd like to kind of get into, and it's fun to think that yes, it's on a very tiny scale, but when you have a web series, it's like you're your own little network, you're your own little studio. You're the network execs, you're the director, you're the casting agent, you're the producer, and I'll probably end up being in front of the camera in it too. So I'm looking forward to having that kind of level of creativity and control on a fun little web series coming up. So those are my goals for 2023, Mike, as we wind it down.
well, buddy, it's a good list. I mean, I would guess I would say that with the web series, one of the advantages is of the immediate response from the audience or close to immediate. If you release something on a Friday, by Monday, you might get a couple of thousand or more views, and you'll know pretty quickly if this thing is going over or if it's not, or if it's somewhere in between, which most projects fall into this somewhere in between. So that's always a good thing.
We're gonna give it a whirl, Mike. We're gonna roll the dice. So guys, that's about it for this year. I mean, really just working on taking inventory on everything I got going on, focusing my energy on what's ready soonest, getting that out there, finding some new writers and new collaborators to bring on so that I can, get one of these 20 or 25 ideas, get a little help on writing one, two, three, or even a few of them from some other hands. And just creating content too. I didn't mention that, but thank you very much, all the people who've been subscribing to my YouTube channel. We're teetering on 800 subscribers. We're getting close. Goal is to get to 1,000 real soon. But I've been having so much fun making a lot of this little content. A lot of the YouTube shorts, hashtag shorts, just making a lot of fun videos with my action figures and just goofing around at home and making cat videos and just like, again, it's like I said, man, I've got an active brain. I love to create and I can't stop doing it. So the YouTube shorts are a fun way for me. If I have a little idea in the middle of the day and it's a 10-second little silly video that might make somebody smile on the other end, well, I'm glad I got a place to put that content out there. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've been just putting stuff out like crazy, lots of content, lots of uploads. Try to post a couple, 2-3 videos every day. Be on the lookout. And thanks again for watching. Next week we're going to be talking about a movie that Mike and I were both in. We're going way into the Wayback Machine. I believe this movie was shot, I want to say 2012, Mike. I want to say
No,
like
it was 2014 to 15 because the Brady
okay.
and the Patriots won the Super Bowl while we were there. The
Right.
first one,
Okay.
second set.
So we're going back to 2014 when we shot this one.
Early 2015, I think.
Yeah, because it was January. Okay, so
Right.
beginning of 2015. So this is 7 years ago now. It's basically the 7-year anniversary of us filming a movie called The Assault. But Mike and I know it as Blue Line because when we were shooting the movie, it was called Blue Line. But then, as we know, movie titles change over time. So check out a movie called The Assault. It stars Tom Sizemore, and it stars myself as well. So you'll see me, you'll see Mikey in there, and it also stars Kevin Nash, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and I know one of Mike's favorites as well. Mike and I have some great stories from our time on set with Kevin Nash, with Tom Sizemore, and also this was a fun one for me because we had a massive blizzard right in the middle of filming this movie. And there was about a 3 or 4 day period where we literally couldn't shoot because the conditions were so snowy, icy, and just couldn't get out of the hotel. So we had like this fun, like 2 or 3 days where it was kind of like just a bunch of kids at a college campus, and we're like stuck going stir crazy in this hotel. And we made the best of it. We had a lot of fun those few days. So I can't wait to reminisce on this one. It was directed by Jacob Cooney, who actually, so funny how all these little stories intertwine. Jacob Cooney directed Merry Xmas. So this was the very first time that I was directed by Jacob Cooney 7 years ago. And this was also the very first time that I worked with Richard Switzer. Richard produced this movie. So a lot of fun stories on this one. I'm excited for next week.
Well, Tommy, I can say one thing about the passage of time. While we were filming that movie, or while that movie was being filmed, I actually I left Connecticut, went to Rhode Island for a few days and came back. But while I was in Rhode Island during the middle of that shooting, I watched on HBO Vladimir Klitschko, I think it was either Vladimir or Vitaly Klitschko, lose the heavyweight title of the world to Tyson Fury. So that was Tyson Fury's first championship win. And now this guy, I think he's still undefeated. He beat Deontay Wilder in 2 out of 3 matches, and he's considered one of the greatest boxers of all time. And 7 years ago, he was winning his first title while this movie was being shot.
Yeah, a lot can happen in 7 years, man. It's really funny. I'm gonna go back and look through some pictures, and as I always do to prep for that episode. So it's gonna be an interesting trip down memory lane. But yeah, like you said, man, 7 years ago, sometimes when you take a step back, like we said, we're always moving so quick. Sometimes we don't stop and smell the roses, and we don't look around like we should. And when you think back, yeah, man, 7 years ago, a long time. So that's why we do this show. We get to revisit those moments and remember a lot of great things that have kind of slipped our mind. And it's fun to think back on those things and reminisce. And I think sometimes you can learn something from going back in time a little bit, revisiting your past. Maybe you can learn some lessons that you might have forgotten over all these years, because sometimes we forget more than we ever learned. So always a good time. Always great chatting with you, Mike. Thank you very much to everybody who's been watching along. Thanks to everybody who's going to go ahead and click and watch this in the future. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. We got this show streaming. It's screaming every week. It's screaming. It's streaming every week, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern on Tuesdays right here on my YouTube channel. We'll see you all next week. Happy New Year, everybody. You can say that for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks even. Happy New Year.
7
Say it
weeks.
till February. Say it till February. Happy New Year.
Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel And thanks for everyone for hanging with us for the whole 2022, and look forward to 2023.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon.